Hey VW lovers, here is a video on my 55 Oval Window Beetle. I've had this car for a really long time, actually about 20 years now. The car has changed a bit over time, kind of evolved into what it is now. The car, we bought it was a project that was owned by a friend of my dad's, a guy that he worked with in San Diego. My dad tried to talk the guy out of the car for a number of years. The guy finally gave in and sold it to us. I started working on the car. Originally, the car was basically totally stock, although it was not really assembled at all when we bought it. It didn't have any wiring in it. The chassis and chassis and body were just kind of sitting on each other. It wasn't bolted together. No wiring, no motor, etc., etc. So we put it together initially with a little 40 horse motor, and I drove it around like that for a while. I put I had some widened smoothies made for the back. They were 6 inches wide, and ran those with 215 white walls on the back and then 135 white walls on the front, kind of an old school hot rod look. At some point around 2000, maybe 10 or so, I kind of got tired of that look. I wanted to do something different. I looked at maybe doing like a cow look with the car and stuff like that. But originally ultimately this is what I kind of landed on, was kind of inspired by Porsche 356 Outlaws, and you can probably see some details here that's kind of reminiscent of those cars. So let's go over some details that I did on this car. So one of the first things I think that kind of stand out on this car and kind of set it aside from a lot of other cars out here are the wheels. And at first glance, these may just look kind of like the Porsche 356 replicas that you can get all day. The difference with these is I actually had these turned into 16-inch wheels, so they're more more reminiscent of the early 356s that had 16s. But the front ones I had widened to 6 inches, so the fronts are 16 by 6s, and then the rear are 16 by 7. And you can see on the rear I had reverse offset done on them, so you can see you get that really nice kind of deep dish look that you get from doing the reverse offset, where the actual hoop of the wheel is kind of turned backwards from how you would normally run it. It gives it that really wide, deep set look. And so yeah, I deleted the hubcap clips on these. I run them without clips. The other thing that a lot of people probably wouldn't notice that I did on these wheels was normally for each lug nut there's only a single hole for adjusting the brakes. So essentially there'd be like one here, one here, etc. So what I did was I had them put another one symmetric to each of those. So now for every lug nut there's a pair that kind of straddles the lug nut. It gives the wheel a much more symmetric look than if there's just one hole adjacent to each lug nut. So little details like that, I really enjoy doing, things that most people probably wouldn't even notice. But I think it's fun to do little things like that. I know they're there. 90% of people probably don't notice them, but for me, that's kind of part of the fun of it. So let's go around the front here. So the front, I put on the sort of headlight grills to protect them from rock chips and so on. I actually run these without any glass in them. You save a little bit of weight up there. I didn't think it was necessary to have the glass on there, especially with the guards. And then I'm running a little pair of H3 driving lights that you can see here that are mounted on the aluminum T-bars. These aluminum T-bars we actually bought from Fat Performance back when they were still here in orange. And one of the back ones is actually signed by a couple of those guys that were at Fat. Here's another little subtle thing I did, is normally the horn grills, I made these 3D printed air inlets here. I don't know if you're going to be able to see in there or not. Probably not, it's too dark. But that actually connects to, you can see it under here, maybe. Yeah, you can see that orange hose right there. That actually connects to those horn grill ducts. and then it leads basically up to the wheel rotor to help cool the brakes. So again, just little things like that a lot of people probably wouldn't notice. I just really enjoy doing those kind of subtle little details like that, really for me more than anyone else. Here's another little detail kind of stole from the 356 Outlaws, is the leather hood straps that you see here. A little bit painful to drill holes in my 4-tab hood, but you know, I got over it pretty quick because I am really happy with how it looks and kind of the look it gives the car. So just an overall look from the side here. You know, a few stickers on the car. I tried to not go too crazy with them, just again to kind of get that outlaw look. Of course, I run Coney shocks on all 4 corners there, so there's the Coney sticker. The number 37, a lot of people ask about that. 37 was actually the year that my dad was born in. Unfortunately, he passed away before we actually got this car to be a running, driving car. So the 37 is kind of in honor of my dad. So it helps me remember him every time I drive this car, which he really loved. And I'm sad, of course, that he never got to drive it with me. Let's take a look on the inside of the car. So these are stock seat frames for this car for a 55, but I had them reupholstered by Dave Barunda, who owns Stitch Corp in Norwalk. He does a lot of cars for Jay Leno. I had him add a lot of bolstering on these seats. It's probably hard to tell in the video, but they do have somewhat of a bolstering to them. You know, not like a Recaro or something, but it's definitely enough to help hold me in place in the seats when I'm going around turns. You can see on the driver's side here, I've got a 5-point harness, and then on the passenger side, it's a 4-point harness. Here, Nardi steering wheel from ISP West. I made a custom gauge pod that you can see down here by taking a one of these the speaker grills here, and I kind of cut it down, and we machined some little bezels for it for the gauges to fit in. So, you know, again, just kind of a little unique custom touch that I did. You won't see another one like that that I'm aware of. Digital fuel gauge here. This is a button on the horn, or excuse me, on the steering wheel for the 2-step rev limiter for launching the car. Vintage speed Taiwan shifter. You know, other than that, the interior is pretty stock. You know, the door panels, again, I had those custom made to kind of look like a 356, the way the pocket is on the bottom, running the full length and kind of sweeping up near the front. I don't run any backseat in the car. There wouldn't be any room for anyone to sit back there because of the Ron Loomis Racing roll bar that we put in here. I had Ron make this custom for me for this car. At the time, he didn't make this X-bar configuration. After he made one for me, he started offering it. It took me a while to convince Ron that I would actually be able to get this in the car. But it works really well as far as getting in the car. And yeah, for people who don't want to run a back seat, it's just a lot better look, and I think it's got to be a lot stiffer too, as far as stiffening the chassis versus going sort of over the back windows like this, and then kind of down below where, or behind where a back seat would be. And I did notice that this stiffens the chassis up quite a bit, so it's doing its job. I've got the door bars on both sides that you can see here. That helps stiffen it up a lot as well. That's about it for the inside of the car. The back of the car, nothing much to see here on the outside. Just, you know, pretty basic stock body work, except of course the T-bars. This is an early 55, so it does have egg tail lights. And I should have pointed out earlier, the car does have semaphores too, which are working. I restored these a year or so ago. I did put blinking bulbs in them, so maybe other drivers in traffic would notice them a little bit more, but probably not. So let's take a look at the motor real quick here. So So the motor is a 2332cc motor that I built myself. I've actually built this motor a couple times, most recently about a year and a half ago when the CB Performance crankshaft snapped. Since then I put in a DeMello crankshaft, and so far so good with that one. The motor, when we built it the first time around, dynoed at 231 horsepower at 7,500 RPMs. That was on Darren Garola, DRD Racing. That was on his dyno back in Santa Ana when he had his shop over there. So yeah, it's a pretty stout little motor. It gets the job done. You know, I didn't build the car for drag racing, so you know, I honestly don't really know what the car runs in the quarter or the eighth. It should do pretty good with that much power, but you know, again, I didn't really build the car for drag racing. It's more for track use, you know, either autocross or more of like a road course. The transmission is a 388 ring and pinion. It's got a Super Beetle main shaft and then a 148 third and a 104 fourth, so kind of somewhat close ratio gears. The trick with the transmission though is it has a guard transmission, limited slip differential, so that really helps the car on corner exit when like slalom racing with it, or you know, just even on the street taking turns really fast. It really helps put the power to the ground. Huge improvement on that one over an open diff. So I tried to keep the body of the car pretty much stock. You know, it is a very original car, and that it's the original pan, the original body. It's all the correct metal work on the car. So I didn't really do anything to that. More just modifying the suspension and so on and so forth with the car, but trying to keep a lot of the originality there of it. Let's go back to the front end here for a second, now that I've got a light in my hand. So recently myself and a friend made a custom sway bar setup for this car. He's going to run one like it on his too. So this is a 19 millimeter adjustable sway bar. You can see the arms here. We've got 3 adjustment points on those that adjust. Each one is about a 10% change in stiffness. So we can kind of dial that in, because again, I did build the car to go around turns, not just go straight. While we're here, you might have noticed the front tires. These are Toyo R888Rs, so these are pretty nice sticky tires. I wouldn't really recommend somebody drive these tires in a lot of rain, but here in Southern California, you know, we don't have that much rain. Even when there was the supposed hurricane that we were supposed to have, you know, it really didn't rain that much, so it's kind of a joke here. But yeah, I wouldn't drive this in a torrential downpour if we ever actually had one. Likewise around back, I did make a custom sway bar setup for the back too. You can kind of see it here. It's based off a Impy IRS sway bar, but I adapted it to the swing axle setup here. And I don't know if you can see or not, but I made some adjustable end links. Again, you can adjust, there's 3 points of adjustment on there, and each one changes it by 10%. So yeah, I should be able to get it dialed in. I haven't had a chance to take the car out on the autocross circuit since I've done the front and rear new sway bars. So I'm gonna need to get those dialed in, but last time I had the car out, I didn't have the rear sway bar, and the car is always kind of pushed mid-turn, so I felt like I needed more rear roll resistance, so that's when I added the back one. And then around the same time, I went ahead and made a new front one that was adjustable, same size as the old one, 19 millimeter, but adjustable now. So hopefully I can really set up the balance of the car. So anyway, that was kind of a long video. Sorry about that. If for those of you who stuck it out, I thank you for your patience. There's a lot of stuff on this car I didn't even talk about. There's so much that I've done on this car that it's kind of hard to capture it all, even in a 14 or 15 minute video. We did do a article on this car pretty recently. So you can see in, let's see, what issue is this? I think this was the June Volksworld. They did a story on this car. and they actually gave us the center spread here, which was kind of cool. So if you want to read some more details about the car, you can always pick up the June Volksworld, and you can see pretty nice story that that Mark Walker did on the car with photography by my buddy Tim Eubanks. So yeah, pick this one up if you're interested, and give it a read. A lot more details in here that I didn't talk about on the video. So thanks for watching. Again, sorry that this one's kind of long, but there's so much to talk about on this car that you know, I barely touched the surface. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed it. If anyone has any questions, feel free to ask, or reach out to me through our shop's website. Thanks.